I want to mention before I forget that some of you are on, probably very few in this room, are on a mailing list that I maintain. I send one article or editorial related to population and global sustainability issues per day to a list of people around the world who are interested in these subjects. It's rather a depressed group, but it's turned into a real network with people sending me articles from all over the world that I then redistribute to this list. And if you are interested in being on the list, you are welcome to do so. On our website, populationmedia.org, you can sign up. There's a button for subscribe, and you can go there and sign up to be on our daily list or on monthly e-news. Monthly e-news is produced by Katie Elmore, our Director of Public Affairs, who is seated in the back. Katie, would you rise? There she is. And seated next to her is our Philippine Country Director, who's now living in Australia, Maggie Kudanan. Maggie? Maggie produced a program which I'll talk about briefly when I get into this slideshow. There we go. But let me first lay the groundwork for why we're doing what we're doing. And this is, of course, in large part, a subject you probably all know very well. There has been a lot of progress in the population field in bringing down fertility rates through the spread of family planning. And this was something that the United States was a major player in the 1970s. As well as other donor governments like Australia, putting family planning clinics into developing countries around the world. And it met a large part of the unmet demand for family planning. However, while use of contraception among married couples has grown from 10% in 1960 to 55% today, the 45% non-users outnumber the 90% non-users from 1960 because of population growth. Even more of concern is the reasons for that 45% non-users, the reasons they give for their non-use of family planning. Many of these people don't want additional children, but the largest or the most common reason for non-use is wanting additional, wanting additional children. So the most important driving factor behind non-use of family planning is the desire for large families or desire for additional children. Even among those who don't want additional children, the reasons have very little to do with lack of access to services. And try as he might, George Bush did not totally decrease access to family planning services. It made matters worse for the last 8 years, and hopefully the U.S. will start to redeem itself under its new administration. But the primary reasons given are, number one, fear of side effects. This is in part because various institutions are spreading intentional misinformation about the relative safety of contraception compared to early and repeated childbearing. And as a result, people are afraid to use contraception because they are hearing that it's dangerous. In East Africa, particularly malicious misinformation campaign is underway to convince African men and women that condoms contain the AIDS virus. And so people are dying from AIDS because they have been warned not to use condoms because that could be fatal. It is really a criminal activity being done in the name of religion. Second is male opposition. Some of this is perceived male opposition, but in many tradition-bound societies, women are afraid to talk to their husbands about this subject, so they perceive that the man is opposed, but they may not have brought it up. But some of it is indeed real. Men jump to the conclusion that if they were on the pill, they could have all the sex partners they want, so they think their wives would operate the same way. There's little evidence that their assumptions are correct, but nevertheless there is male opposition for that and other reasons. Fatalism is a very important reason. Indeed, in the demographic and health surveys that have been carried out in maybe 6 countries in the developing world, the interviews often focus on the issue of fatalism. There's a wonderful paper by a French scholar named Etienne van der Waal, who looked at the survey questionnaires and responses from the demographic and health surveys related to this issue. And the interviews often went like this. You're a married woman? Yes. Are you sexually active? Yes. Do you want additional pregnancies or childbirth in the next 2 years, which is the standard demographic question? No, I can't feed the children I have. I desperately don't want any more children. Are you using a method of contraception? No. Well, do you understand that you could become pregnant because you're not using contraception and you're sexually active? That would be all right. But I don't understand. You said you don't want children. I desperately don't want more children. So how is it all right that you might become pregnant? Sir, Allah has made these decisions since the beginning of the universe. I'm only a woman. It is up to Allah or up to God how many children I will have. So the concept is somebody else is making these decisions. Sometimes it's the husband, sometimes it's one's deity. But indeed, the idea that somebody has the right and the ability to determine family size outcome is still a novelty in parts of the world. And finally, perceived religious opposition. Now, I'm fond of saying and often get caught up by these statements when I make them in the media that there is no religion that is opposed to planning your family. People wonder how I can make such a claim, but indeed, the Quran, which doesn't mention family planning, encourages women to breastfeed their infants for at least 2 years. And some scholars, including some who have made official findings at Al-Aram University, have said because of that call in the Quran for breastfeeding for at least 2 years, pregnancy could interrupt that, and therefore family planning is inherently endorsed by the Quran. The Catholic Church, of course, is opposed to certain methods of family planning, but they're not opposed to family planning. They're just opposed to the methods that are most effective. For theological reasons that many Catholics have trouble understanding. So at any rate, these are the primary barriers to use. These are cultural and informational issues. And lack of access physically to services is cited in most countries by fewer than 2% of people who are not using family planning and don't want children.